Good morning, good afternoon if you are somewhere in some other country, but good day to all of you. Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Cignal TV channels 8 and 250. And for those of you who still have not subscribed to Cignal or maybe abroad elsewhere watching us via social media, you can watch us on facebook.com/onenewsph. You can also watch us via YouTube. Even our replays are on YouTube. Just enter One News and One News PH. And also, if you download the Signal Play app, you can catch us on the go. Okay. August 9, 2021. It's a Monday. Welcome to the program. And today we will give you a explanatory lecture of sorts. We will be speaking to Father Nic Austriaco and Dr. Guido David of the OCTA Research Group because there have been calls by a gang of five in Congress. If I heard it correctly, a gang of five congressmen and congresswomen. Some we like, some we don't know who they are, but essentially calling for a an inquiry or investigation of the OCTA Research Group in aid of legislation. Unahan na natin sila para magkaalaman because our fear is once politicians get into the mix, things get ugly, get tense, they tend to be stressful. So we brought those gentlemen, those experts to our program today so that they will calmly, in a friendly manner, be able to explain what is OCTA Research Group all about. So stick around. In the meantime, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star. Ang balitang maasahan ng pahayagan para sa masa. I'm just making all of that up, but the Philippine Star with news you can trust. Let's go. There you go. U.S. vows continued presence in South China Sea. Okay, and then House vows increased budget for sports. And the main headline is COVID vaccination set for ages 12 to 17 years, beginning end of September. And if the team agenda would, please raise the front page so we can go to the lower part of the front page if you would. And bulaga, there we go. Lower, please. Lower, there we go. 20,000 flagged in NCR for ECQ violations. COVID cases in Metro Manila, highest in 3 months according to the OCTA Group. 326,400 doses of Moderna vaccine arrive at NAIA. Okay, now let's go to the news behind the headlines. The government targets to vaccinate children 12 to 17 years old against COVID-19 as early as the end of September 2021. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. said they will particularly focus on children with comorbidities. As of now, only Pfizer is approved for the inoculation of the age group in the country. Ang punto lang po natin dyan, our comment on that particular news is perhaps the national government and the vaccine czar could focus more on the vaccination of the current list of priorities kasi ang nangyayari po, umaasa, nagpapaasa, and when you give people something to look forward to or hope for, and you fail to deliver, then public sympathy is lost and public relations is ruined. Yun lang po ang sa atin. Kasi yung current problem with vaccination needs to be addressed first before we start making this forecast and promises. Okay, moving forward in the news, Metro Manila has recorded 2,823 new COVID-19 cases as of last Saturday. This is the highest single-day spike of COVID-19 cases since May 2. Inuulit po natin na that's for Metro Manila only. Okay? OCTA Research also reported that the 7-day average in the National Capital Region or Metro Manila increased by 62%. As I said, we will have the OCTA Research Fellows Guido David and Father Nic Austriaco later to discuss all of this. And last but not the least, the House leaders or members of the House Representatives vowed to substantially increase the budget for sports next year. This after the Philippines concluded its most successful Olympics campaign in history with 1 bronze, 2 silvers, and the country's first gold medal. And House Ways Committee Chairman Joey Salceda said the country needs to invest in in our athletes to get more podium finishes. Pasensya na, medyo nag-distract lang ako itong mga nagme-message. Okay, and our quote for the day, relative to this call for the investigation of the OCTA Research Group, there you go. We've been conditioned to think that only politicians can solve our problems. But at some point, maybe we will wake up and recognize that it was politicians who created our problems. Ben Carson, he's a neurosurgeon, and he was a presidential hopeful in the U.S. elections. He's a respected black or African American leader in the United States. Okay, so like I said, lawmakers filed a resolution last week seeking a public inquiry on the OCTA Research Group's background and credentials. Along with this, the University of the Philippines has distanced itself from OCTA Research. To get their side in these recent developments, we have with us Father Nic Austriaco and Professor Guido David of the OCTA Research Group. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi, good morning, Cito.
Father Nic, good morning to you.
Good morning to you from the States. Hi,
Okay,
Guido.
Hi, Father.
Okay, gentlemen, let's get the ball rolling. Sabi ko nga, una-unahan lang yan. And I felt that it would be better to invite both of you here to the program where you could share or answer certain concerns or questions that this Gang of Five in Congress wants to ask you ultimately when they invite you to the Congress. Now, I don't want to create any stress here or any tension, but I think I would consider agenda neutral ground, and even those very same congressmen and congresswomen have been on this program. So let's get it started. And free for all this morning. Gentlemen, what is OCTA Research Group and how did it come about?
Guido, you start.
Yes, and I think I should be the one to answer that. So, OCTA Research was founded way before the pandemic as a research and polling firm. So, and it was founded, I think, around 2018 or 2019. And when the pandemic started, it was basically not operational yet. At the time, well, I'm also a professor of mathematics at the University of the Philippines. And at the time when the COVID started, I started doing research independently because there are several other teams in UP. So, well, at that time, I actually got in touch with Professor Ranjit Rai, and he proposed to collaborate on this research. It's like a study group, and we began publishing reports. So we started as a small group, and then later we added Father Nicanor because he actually reached out to me from the U.S. Where he is now. Everybody knows he's a PhilAm, but he resides in the U.S. And then because of the need to distinguish itself, we started to move away from being just a UP team, especially since other non-UP academics like Father Nick joined the team. So we used the OCTA branding um, to distinguish ourselves from other research groups.
Okay, Father Nick, your view.
Well, I mean, as my friend Guido pointed out, I began. I was reading up on some of their reports during the pandemic, and it turns out that one of Guido's high school friends was one of my friends when I was at MIT. And so, in fact, I reached out to my Filipino friend at MIT who knew Guido, and it was these providential contacts that brought us together to be part of an interdisciplinary independent team. And I would like to emphasize that a lot of people are wondering why it was UP Octa and now it's not UP Octa. And I think that the reason is historically it started off with a group of UP professors, but now it's expanded to include professors and academics from other institutions, which is why it's simply Octa Research.
Okay, when you say you're clarifying the difference or the roots of UP Octa becoming Octa Research. Now, was it was it an organization, Guido, that was funded, connected with the University of the Philippines, or were you just a bunch of professors from the University of the Philippines? Kasi iba yun. Iba yung
Right.
grupo lang kayo ng mga galing UP kesa sa isang organisasyon na napopondohan at pinangangasiwaan or managed by the University of the Philippines.
Right. Where it's the second point, Cito. Now we're just a bunch of professors from University of the Philippines. Not we're not an organization within UP. We don't have, you know, a link with UP in the sense that there's no relationship between Octa Research and University of the Philippines. So it's like a private entity, and I'm a member of both. Now, the reason primarily that it started to become UP Octa was actually it was the media that was calling us UP Octa because we were initially a UP team that morphed into an Octa research team,
Mhm.
um, and it was mainly the function of the media. Um, so we actually called ourselves Octa Research at that point when once we started to distinguish ourselves, and this was actually brought up in my own college. And they said, why are you calling yourselves UP Octa? I said, well, it's primarily a function of the media. And they said, well, we'll take care of that. We'll let the media know that, you're not a UP Octa, you're not UP connected in the sense that Octa Research is not connected with UP. But I can't control what
Yeah.
the media calls us. But we call ourselves Octa Research Group.
Okay, so the Octa Research Group, Father Nick, is a private organization. Are you a formal SEC registered or with a business permit with the with some mayor, etc.? Because I can already see that this is the sort of question that the
Right.
members of Congress will initiate.
So I'm going to defer again to Guido for
Right.
that because
Okay.
he knows more of the nuts and bolts of the organization.
Okay,
Right.
Guido, please.
Right, and Father was brought in as mainly, like a collaborator who was also working on COVID. So Octa Research has its SEC, but I'm not sure if I can, answer more than that. It has a business permit and an SEC. So I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, now you formed together primarily as a research and a polling or survey group. When you say research, what particular field of research are we talking about? Because it would seem that you're either a mathematical researcher, forecaster, or political researcher. But when you say research, what are you referring to?
So let me address that. So there are two teams within OCTA. One that is really focused on pandemic management and data analysis, and I am part of that team. And there's also another team, another component of OCTA that preceded me, that began when OCTA was set up prior to the pandemic, that does public opinion polling. I am not involved in that at all. I mean, I hear what my friends say about that, and it's very interesting. And many of the polls have to deal with COVID-19, which is why it's really important for what we are doing on the COVID side. But COVID is a really complicated beast. And so one of the amazing things about being part of OCTA is that we have so many different specialties and expertise present in the team. So I am a biologist, but my undergraduate degree is in engineering, and I spent 4 years modeling. And so what ended up happening during the pandemic is I had to resurrect a lot of the modeling skills that I thought I had long put aside, and brought that to bear for the pandemic in the Philippines. Guido is a mathematician, and we complement each other in that way. It's very helpful because I ask him about my modeling, he asked me about his. We talk and compare our strategies. Sometimes we will have two separate models. It confuses the media. But it's so important that we have independent models to corroborate each other. And I think this is one of the strengths of OCTA, is OCTA doesn't really have one model. Often we have several models because our group has different expertise that comes to bear on the problem.
Okay, but how do you become corporately? Let me rephrase that. The presumption is Okta must also be a company of sorts. Who's the president, CEO, general manager? Who's funding this organization, or how does this business model operate?
Well, I will try to answer that, Cito, within I'm not sure if I'm at liberty because, I'm not the president. I think those details should come out. I'm really just like Father Nick. We are participants here, and in fact, we are when we do the COVID modeling and the forecasting. This is all voluntary work. So even though OCTA Research is a private organization, which is a pool of people with skills related that can be applied to COVID. For example, we have several infectious disease specialists who, give their recommendations and their input into what we do. So there. So as far as the other details you're asking, actually not even privy to some of those information. So I'm not sure if I'm
But
at liberty,
okay,
right?
let me just put it this way, Guido and Father Nick. Do you guys get paid for the work you do?
So for the national work, this is all pure volunteer. Now, and again, so I have mentioned this before when I was speaking on the Chiefs. Okay, an LGU may occasionally ask us to work with them, and at that point, the LGU may decide to enter into a contractual relationship with OCTA, because we might have to hire assistants to help on the day-to-day data analysis for an LGU. So we might have a stipend for that. But again, it's easiest to defer it to the guy in charge. So you can always invite Professor Ranjit Rai to go on your show. He is so much more involved in the contractual and the details behind all of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ranjit and I go way back into our childhood, so I don't think it would look good if childhood friends, although I'm a little older than him, would be talking on national TV, because we don't want to be suspected, or people saying, "Oh, Sito, he's your kabarkada," or the younger brother of so and so. So he's basically out of this scenario. But okay, so as far as COVID, DOH, the national picture is concerned, you guys don't get paid for the work you do. You're all
Okay.
doing it on a volunteer basis. Okay, let's focus on the work. But before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to. I violated my own code, which is before you do anything, introduce your guests properly so people understand why they are who they are. First of all, let's talk about Father Nic Austriaco because our guests cannot talk about their biodata because it would sound like serious bragging. Now, Father Nic Austriaco, OCTA Research Group, is a visiting professor of biological sciences at the University of Santo Tomas. He is a biology and theology professor in Providence College, Rhode Island, United States of America. His areas of expertise, among many, are biology of cancer, aging, and programmed cell death, healthcare ethics and bioethics in the Catholic tradition, philosophical and theological implications of modern evolutionary theory. Sige, kung nag-nosebleed po kayo, magkakuha na kayo ng tissue at punasan nyo na ilong nyo. University of Pennsylvania, he is a Bachelor of Science Engineering. He has a doctorate of sacred theology in moral theology and ethics, University of Freiburg, Switzerland. He has a PhD in biology at the MIT, otherwise known as Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay. Professor Guido David of the OCTA Research Group is a professor at the University of the Philippines, teaches undergraduate and graduate level courses in applied mathematics. Main areas of interest are biomechanics, mathematical modeling, game theory, numerical analysis, mathematics of finance, and artificial neural networks. He is Chief Technology Officer of the Diliman Artificial Intelligence. He is the host of award-winning radio program Pinoy Scientist on Radio Aguila Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and TOYM awardee. Pinoy Scientist was a winner in the 2016 KBP Golden Dove Awards. His education, Texas A&M University, master's degree in mathematics, Doctor of Philosophy in Biomedical and Medical Engineering. Ako po, undergrad lang, journalism. Nanliliit ako talaga sa hiya. Pagkatapos, puro pa mathematician tong kausap ko. Math 11 ko lang, take 7 na ako. And that's not a lie, gentlemen. That's the truth. Math 77. Kanya pati ako mayroong masters in mathematics. Anyway, sorry, I just needed to put that in, okay? Here we go. Now, let's talk about the work you do. First of all, where do you get your information or your data?
Yes, I will answer that first, and then Father Nick could add to that. Our data source is primarily the Department of Health data drop, because the Department of Health is an aggregator. But we also use other sources of information. For example, local governments that we work with occasionally, or some local governments that we work with, and then other sources of information, such as sometimes we get access to hospital data because we have doctors who are members of the group. Father Nick.
Yes, and I just want to add that we base our studies also. We get information on COVID, of course, from the published scientific literature from around the world, because we have to keep track of the most up-to-date science in order to make sure we understand, for example, the Delta variant.
Okay, now, so because the general impression is that, particularly coming from you, Guido, that the data that you base your work on is provided to you by the DOH. Is this provided to you by the DOH, or is it something you basically harvested from the announcements of the DOH?
So let me answer that. Uh, the DOH has a public data drop that is available to anyone in the world. So, for example, the Johns Hopkins uh, COVID site, which
Mm.
tracks COVID in the Philippines, relies on the same data source. So, one of the things that I think we have to keep emphasizing is that DOH data drop is the official data of the Republic of the Philippines for the entire world. So that is the reason why we rely on that data. Now, this data is provided usually in Excel form. So we have to download that data source, and then we have to analyze that data in order to extract from that data the patterns and trends that we want to analyze.
Okay, now how do you go about forecasting? Because I remember Guido about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, OCTA Research stated, or you stated, that there is a possibility that we will be hitting 10,000 cases a day by this time of in August, and it's actually happened. And you've done the same, whether it's Ranjit, you, I don't remember Father Nick ever making a direct forecast, but every time you guys made a forecast, you always basically are within 95% of the bullseye. How do you guys do it?
Well, I will answer that, Cito. And everywhere in the world, the method of forecasting, the basic method, the fundamentals of forecasting is the same. You base it on the trend and of the number of cases that you're seeing. So if you're seeing, for example, 9,000 cases yesterday, 11,000 cases the other day, so you put those information together and then you project. So the simplest way would be, for example, I mean, you could go about it in different ways. One simple way would be to just draw a straight line or take the percentage increase and apply it. For example, if it's increasing by 5% every day, you can just do that. We actually use a mathematical model to do the projections, but the important thing is what kind of data do you look at? And this was actually brought about by someone who has been posting on social media. A health expert has been posting on social media saying that our data is not correct when we actually are using data based from the Department of Health. But it's how we look at data. And as a data analyst, you, you can just look at the data as it is, or you can make some treatments to the data. What that means is you can look at past patterns and say, well, this data may be improved by adding some tweaks to it, adding some loading to it, or looking at correlation factors. So there are many ways you can actually improve how you are looking at the data. You don't look at the data exactly how the DOH presents it, but you can improve on that by using statistical treatments. And I don't want to get into detail because we actually have a talk in about 30 minutes with the Philippine American Academics Academy for Science and Engineering, where I will be going in more detail about that. But basically that's how it goes. And the main driver, or the most critical indicator here, Sita, is the reproduction number, which is why we always talk about it. And this is very important. And that's why
Mhm.
almost all the countries use the reproduction number. And it's just one number. It's basically the how fast the pandemic is spreading. And if we know how fast it is
Okay, I
spreading,
think we've had
right.
a problem. Father Nick, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, we seem to be suffering a signal problem here. Not Signal TV, but internet. Okay, there you go, gentlemen. We're
Hello.
back.
We're back.
Why doesn't
Right.
that surprise me? Okay. In any case, I'm too paranoid. But okay, so you make your forecast, etc., and you've been hitting the button now. Why do some people feel the need to investigate you, question, or understand your methodology? Has there been a real mistake, a real argument, Father Nick? You were about to respond.
So let me take that. This current situation began when one of our critics attacked the modeling techniques that OCTA uses and proposed that our approach to modeling and forecasting was erroneous because of the nature of the data we were looking at. And I think what you're seeing now is there are serious questions about how we do what we do. And I'm just going to echo my colleague Guido. I mean, biology is about patterns. And what we're looking for is we're looking at past historical patterns to anticipate the future behavior of a biological entity, in this case, a viral pandemic, in the short term. And one of the challenges we have is that there are limitations and shortcomings of the DOH data. And I think everyone is aware of this. When you're in the middle of the pandemic, especially when data is recorded by hand and by paper rather than by digital means, which is what is being done in other countries, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to have delays. And so we have been charged, one of our critics has complained that we are not aware of the shortcomings of this data. However, as Guido and I are exquisitely aware, we know of these problems, but there are ways that we can take into account the challenges of the flaws of the data in order to make sure that our forecasts are reasonable. And I think that's one of the things, Cito, you yourself said, I only do hospital forecasts. Guido does all the forecasting for the pandemic as a whole. And both of our models tend to be accurate. Now, they're not accurate in terms of they can tell you exactly how many people will get COVID on September 24, 2021. I mean, we cannot do that. We're not God. However, the mathematics can be used to get an approximation of the trend of the pandemic in the next couple of weeks, which is why we can get a sense. We will say 3 weeks from now, if we're not careful, it will be like this.
Okay, now I know for a fact that in the past, none other than Ranjit, and I don't know if you, Guido, have been invited, but I know Ranjit Rai has been invited to the Laging Handa press briefing. He is, your modeling has been used, mentioned one way, in a positive way by government officials. Why is this suddenly an issue, or is it because you guys seem to be forecasting accurately and making people look bad?
Well, yeah, I will answer that first, Sita, and then maybe Father Nick can chime in. But I'm not sure what the reason is. But you're correct. What I could say is that we have been, we have been doing this as public service to help the government specifically and the public, and the government has actually taken up this this offer of our public service, in that not only in Laging Handa, but we're regularly interviewed in government radio and government stations. So I'm actually, I consider myself a regular resource person for certain, government programs, and even they, at least the media, and most of our links are with media. They say that the reason they interview us, or they get us as resource, is because we're usually on the mark, and I think that makes sense. If you keep making proclamations and they don't come true, at some point people will stop listening to you. I mean, I think that's the nature of these things.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the current situation, and maybe Father could add to that.
Yeah, let's go for a quick break, Father Nick, if you don't mind. But we'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, you're back here on Agenda, and with us our Father Nic Austriaco and Professor Guido David of the OCTA Research Group. Father Nic, you were going to make your comment.
So I was in Germany when this probe began, and I was honestly quite surprised. So I've been asking my friends back in the Philippines to help me understand the reasoning for this. Why now? I mean, we've been doing this for, well, I mean, I've been doing this for nearly 12 months, 14 months, and Guido has been doing this since the beginning. And every the different voices I have listened to in the Philippines have said one of two things: it's ego and politics. And so I'm just going to leave it to that. I'm a priest. I deal with broken human beings, and so that answer is very explanatory for me. There's ego back there somewhere, and there's politics back there somewhere. And our responsibility now is to be as transparent as possible, to speak truth as much as possible. And in my case, I have to pray for those who are critical of us in the hope that we will attain some level of understanding that we are all trying to serve the Filipino people.
Well, at least not all politicians in the Philippines are in that basket because Senator Richard Gordon just very recently made a statement that this call for a probe into the workings of the OCTA Research Group is he used the Tagalog term kahibangan, which is sheer madness. It is sheer madness. And then Deputy Speaker Rufus Rodriguez discouraged the initiative of fellow congressmen to investigate OCTA. He added independent research groups should not be interrogated but supported because they are heroes and very qualified. And alyansa ng mga grupong haligi ng agham at teknolohiya or science and technology para sa mamamayan appeal to lawmakers to let scientists and researchers do their job instead of wasting time defending their credentials. In any case, did or were you guys individually or collectively asked, told, or warned by someone from the DOH, from Malacanang, or from the IATF to cease and desist in what you do?
I certainly have not received any such request. We continue to serve the Filipino people in providing the same data analysis that we have provided for the past year. Again, as Guido pointed out, in 20 minutes or so, we are going to speak on a platform, an academic platform, in order to present our methodologies and the justification for our science.
Well,
And I
why is that, Father Nic? Were you asked to present in that Academy of Scientists because of this furor or this issue, or is it just a appreciation of the work?
Well, again, the title of this session is on modeling in the Philippines, and Guido and I were invited by the moderators, one of whom happens to be one of our friends, in order to simply make our case, right? And I think this is important. We have nothing to hide. We have been transparent from the very beginning. Every data set I mean, I think my mother keeps saying, why do you bring up graphs? Sometimes the graphs are so unintelligible to people, ordinary people, but the graphs are the source of our data. We are trying to speak using the data and the conclusions derived from our analysis. Those are all available. They are available upon request. Um, Part of the challenge is that, uh, we are going to, one of the challenges for us as scientists is that the kind of criticisms that we are used to is often done in scientific arenas where we are dealing, for example, with whether or not this set of ordinary differential equations is appropriate for this modeling scenario as compared to another. And I'm used to that kind of debate. And I am still thinking and about praying about how to present this complicated science to individuals who may not have the preparation in differential equations and advanced calculus that may be required to really appreciate the details of the models that we do. So, this is why we're trying to seek an academic forum at this time to present this work. Because in many ways, as scientists, this is what we usually, when we are used to being criticized, but this is how we usually respond to criticism is by going to conferences, speaking at conferences, providing manuscripts that are peer reviewed, and then responding to the criticisms of the peer reviewers.
Well, I think that's an important point, mga kaibigan. Mahalaga po yung sinasabi ni Father Nick na medyo kailangan nilang pag-aralan paano sila magprepresenta, how they will present to this congressional inquiry because the language itself is going to be two different languages or in application because Team Agenda was so quick in my request. I asked them just a few minutes ago to please look into the academic accomplishments of those who would investigate you. Congresswoman Herrera D is a UP graduate for business economics, graduate school for finance. Congressman Bong Suntay is from Ateneo University, College of Law. Ateneo de Manila University, we're not sure about his actual undergrad, but law school, San Beda College. Congresswoman Sharon Garin, University of the Philippines, Visayas for accounting, law school, Ateneo de Manila University, MBA, ESADE Business School in Barcelona, and Stella Kimbo, a regular here on Agenda, UP Economics, Masters in Economics, University of the Philippines, Postdoctoral Fellow, Population Studies Training Center, Brown University, also in Rhode Island. So, I mean, you're going to be talking to economists, MBAs, and you're going to be talking about something that is 10 times more complicated than trigonometry, I suppose.
Yeah, that's correct, Cito. Pero just to add to what Father was saying a while ago, yeah, part of the reason we are presenting today with this academy is because, as I mentioned a while ago, we have been receiving, criticism on social media, which is not really the appropriate platform to respond, to these criticisms because we are used to presenting in scientific conferences, getting peer reviewed in a proper platform. So that was one of the reasons. So that we could at least present our methodology, where fellow scientists can look at it and not, well, I mean, I don't have any knowledge of law and I'm not good in economics or even finance. So everyone has their own specialization, field of expertise, and it would be, as you said, Sita, like talking a different language. When we discuss with people who are not in the same field as we are.
Okay, now what about in the area of public safety, national security concern? Kasi syempre, if it's not one issue, it could be another. Has this ever been brought to your attention, Prof. Guido, Professor David, Father Nick? There is a possibility that what you're doing could cause fear and anxiety, etc., Has this ever been raised? How do you address this in your presentation to make sure that it doesn't cause panic or public concern?
Right. So, well, Cito, I mean, some people can call us alarmists, uh, but if you look at, the relative number of people who do that compared with the people who say that, you know, we, we're right, or they believe in our projections, these numbers, because it's all about the numbers, and are they based on science, and do they believe in it, and do they feel we're not alarmist? I mean, based on what I'm hearing, in fact, in terms of the media, uh, I would say 98, 99% of people in the media support us that we're not alarmists. And there was actually a very good article written by Mr. Tiglao in the Manila Times, that you know the messaging is actually a function of media itself. And it goes, you interview me very often, and you ask me trends, and you can say if you can determine if you think we are being alarmist or not. But when these messages are cascaded to the public, it's usually through the media. So what Mr. Tiglao is saying is that um, sometimes the media may be, I mean, not use CETA, of course, and maybe I'm not mentioning any specific media, but it is a function of the media how the messaging is translated to the public. We just present our figures, the trends, what we're seeing, and uh, and that.
Well, let me add to that. One of the things that many people have told me is that they're most fearful when they don't understand and when they don't know what will happen. And I have received many messages of gratitude because our work helps people to understand so they can prepare. So yes, a Delta surge is incredibly scary, but it is scarier if you do not know it is coming, and if you do not know how long it will last and for how big it will be. And so I have had, especially my relatives, have told me that it's scary, but uh, because there is a sense of anticipation and control, the fear is actually mitigated with the hope that our national government and all of us as the Filipino people can work together to prevent the worst scenarios that are described in many of these projections.
Okay, alam niyo po mga kaibigan and ladies and gentlemen, it's quite ironic because I remember my last interview with you, Guido, Professor David. I asked you a very ticklish question because I remember asking you, Guido, this forecast regarding surges, baka parang ginagamit kayo o nagpapagamit ba kayo sa government to justify the impending lockdown? This was, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago. And I asked whether or not the OCTA forecast were being used to justify the lockdowns. And you said that you are an independent. So parang naiipit kayo sa nag-uumpugang bato. You are caught between a rock and a hard place. You're doing your job, and yet you're being accused by all of this. Now, clearly, OCTA Research refuses to shut up. You have made recent forecasts again. Could you just give us an update, gentlemen, on the recent forecast? What are we looking at? Because I think, Guido, you said that things are still going to get worse before they get better in the next 3 weeks.
Well, Cito, what was very concerning was that 2 days ago on Saturday, we recorded a very high number of cases in the NCR. It was 2,823, and it is the highest in, I believe, 3 months. And the last time we had a higher number was when we were still under MECQ from the previous surge. And but the difference is that time it was going down, now it's going up. and the reproduction number has increased to 1.8. So these are all again based on science. And but yesterday, at least the number was below. It was 2,300. So we're actually very optimistic, or I wouldn't say very optimistic, but at least very hopeful that the lockdown will actually have the desired effect of controlling the surge. And in fact, this is actually proof because based on analysis that I will show in a while, I mean, in the next presentation in about 10 minutes, that um, there's a lag that we see in the data. And what that means is that the ECQ numbers will not be seen until maybe 3 to 4 days later. And this is maybe actually what we're seeing now, that the numbers may be starting to get controlled because of the lockdown. But if we did not have if the government did not issue the lockdown, then the cases would continue to rise. And this is just based on what the trend. If we did not go to ECQ, if we're just following GCQ with heightened restrictions, we could be at 4,500 cases by August 15, by next week. And that is actually
If we didn't do the lockdown.
right. But now we're
Okay.
hopeful that it will contain it to around 3,000 at the most, or 3,100, something like that. And this is the basis for it's a recommendation. It's not, we're not imposing on people to do this, but the basis of our recommendation to have an earlier circuit breaker rather than later. And this is actually something that was appreciated by many people, the mayors, and for example, PA Joey Concepcion, that if we do it earlier, the lockdown will be shorter. But if we wait until we get to now, if we wait until next week, 4,500, that's similar to March 28 when we had ECQ. It's almost the same number. And that lockdown lasted 7 weeks. Pero last year, we had a 2-week lockdown because the cases were lower. It was less than 2,000. Our lockdown was only 2 weeks. So in terms of economic impact, 2 weeks lockdown versus 7.5 weeks lockdown, which would we prefer? The economic impact of a 7-week lockdown is more than 3 times bigger than the 2-week lockdown that we may have. So, and also the livelihood and also the business impact. So it's about, looking into the future and looking at the best strategy, the most optimal strategy to reduce our losses, to reduce the loss of life, the loss of business, loss of economic impact.
Okay, Father Nick, I know both of you guys have to wrap it up because you have a presentation. I'm really sorry about this. But Father Nick, please allow me to give you the last word so that we can put a cap to this, particularly maybe a message to those who want to investigate you.
I think, I'll put it this way. I'm a priest. And because I'm a priest, I'm aware of all of the woundedness in individuals, me included. But we have to call ourselves to greatness in this very difficult time. Our people, the Filipino people, deserve our very best. And I can speak for myself, and I'm sure for my friends in OCTA, that we will collaborate and work with our government to the best of our abilities and more in order to do what is best in terms of pandemic management for our country. We promise to be as transparent as possible. Any congressional investigation, we will present our data as clearly and as simply as possible, given the inherent difficulties when you're dealing with complicated mathematics. And though it is somewhat frustrating to deal with a probe, I'll be very honest. I'm preparing for a new semester here in the United States, and so an additional concern is always, undesirable. As long as we all search for truth, and we search for what is beautiful and what is good, all of this will turn out well. And I think that's my challenge to all of us in the Philippines in these difficult times. Let us be heroic. Let us be excellent. Let us do what is important for the country, and we will make it through because there is a God.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Guido David, Father Nic Austriaco, and God be with you. We hope you will be left to your own devices, left in peace to do a very valuable work and great contribution for public health and public good in the Philippines. Thank you for your work. It is very much appreciated.
God bless
Thank you,
you.
Cito.
Bye.
Thank you for your
Okay.
support.
Okay, yan po ang OCTA Research. And since I have more than enough time, allow me to squeeze in my 5 cents worth. I think there is no arguing the fact that the OCTA Research Group has done us a great service. They have made us face the numbers, the hard facts, and the truth. And they have forecasted, as I pointed out, almost 95% accuracy. Baka mas mataas pa nga po, no? And for people to cast doubts, aspersions, is kind of questionable in itself. Why do I put that? Because look, many of our senators respect their work. Many congressmen respect their work. The DOH works with them. The Malacanang, the government, IATF works with them. And their forecasts have been used to justify government action. Kumbaga, ginamit yung kanilang information upang makatulong i-explika sa ating lahat na kailangan gawin ng pamahalaan yung ginagawang mga paghihigpit, etc. So, as far as the work of OCTA is concerned, it's there and no one can question it, and it's for free. So you can't even talk there. We can't even say they're doing it for the money. They're apolitical, so we can't say it's driven by politics, and it has served public good. Now, why is there a group of people calling for a study, investigation? Alam niyo po, inaral ko yung mga profile nitong mga gustong mag-imbestiga ng OCTA Research Group. Mukhang maayos naman ang mga congressman ito. May mga ginawang maganda, and some of them are actually have been on the show, regulars on the show. So it is hard to even put suspicion on them. Okay, so as far as that is concerned, parang maybe they're doing their job. But here's the problem. I can't help but suspect that someone or somebody or a group is trying to orchestrate members of Congress, some members of media, to kind of challenge, question, or place doubt, or distract people and focus negatively on OCTA Research. And when I think about it, bakit? Why would they do that? Well, first of all, because maybe it makes all these numbers, these forecasts, are too hard for some people to accept. Kumbaga parang, what? That's going to happen? And as a Father Nick once said, in the Philippines, we make things, we often, almost always take things personally. Government officials take it personally. A cabinet member will take it personally. A secretary or undersecretary takes it personally. A businessman takes it personally. Alam niyo po, wag na tayong ma-personal. Wag na nating pine-personal. If we have bad numbers, if we have a bad situation, as Undersecretary Vergere pointed out, it is immaterial if you have Delta or Beta or Alpha. You have COVID, we need to cure it. And that's what we need to do. I'm appealing to the President. Pangunahan mo na, Mr. President, President Digo, pangunahan nyo na po. Please take the lead. We need a unified message. We need to lessen the confusion. Sinulat ko po yan sa aking column sa Philippine Star. Please read it. I am calling out to everyone to just kind of quiet things down, get one speaker only or one messaging only. Wala na yung sobrang dami, 10 ang nagpapa-interview, ang daming pumapapel, ang daming ginagawa, nagkakagulo. Let's all pray for peace. Peace be with you. You always say that in church. Let that peace begin with you. Be a peaceful person to all of you Filipinos. Thank you. That's agenda for today. See you tomorrow, God willing. God bless all of you.